Can you give a brief description of how the X39 patches work? Okay. Let me share screen here. Okay, so the X39 patches, like our other patches, are light therapy devices. So basically, and light therapy has been around for thousands of years, by the way. So we can point back to 5,000 years of light therapy in India. There's a wonderful book, by the way. It's called Let There Be Light, and it's written by Darius Dinshaw. Well, he was the author of the therapy. And what this book does is it provides an instruction manual on how to use different wavelengths of light, different colors, in treating the body and providing therapy for different types of health disorders. So if you are at all interested in light therapy, that would be an excellent book that I could recommend. We know, going back thousands of years to ancient Greece, that they were experimenting with different colored glass as a method of filtering sunlight and providing light therapy, and see what that would do. We know, going back to the early 1900s, there was a Danish scientist, Finsen, who won awards and recognition for his research into light therapy. Today, there's over 5,000 clinical studies that are published in peer review on the use of light to treat different types of health disorders. So what we're doing is we're providing light therapy in a new and novel way. Instead of using a lamp or a cold laser, what we're going to do is stimulate the body with low levels of light using a patch. Now, the patch contains completely organic materials. Technically, they are stereoisomers of amino acids and sugars, other materials, and they're processed in a very specific way so that they will stimulate the skin with very specific wavelengths of light when they're activated by body heat. So your body heat is the power source for the patch. Now, we've also learned over the years, after doing over 80 clinical studies, that you can get systemic effects in the body with the patches. So you can apply them at different points. You can test the blood or the urine, and you'll see that the patch affects the entire body. You can see it bioelectrically too. So what this means is that you could take a patch like X39 and you can apply it to the back of the neck, as it's shown here. You can apply it below the belly button if you want to apply it near a wound. You could do that as well. So here's an illustration that shows this, but quite simply, when you apply the patch to the body, it gets activated immediately by your body heat, which, by the way, is infrared light. And the patch will stimulate the skin with different wavelengths of light in the infrared and the visible spectra. Now, this is a process that's known as photobiomodulation, and it's a specific type of phototherapy. A good way to think about this is you go out in the sun, and sunlight will cause your body to make vitamin D. That's a great example about how UV light causes the body to make vitamin D, a biochemical in the body. And we know how powerful vitamin D is. Let's say that you're a man over the age of 40 or 50 or 60, and you're concerned about decreasing libido or sexual function and declining testosterone levels. Going out in the sun and exposing your neck and shoulders, where the androgen receptors are, to UV light will cause your body to increase its production of testosterone. And that's something that's clinically proven. When we go to sleep at night, we should sleep in a dark room, because the absence of light is going to turn on the production of melatonin and help us sleep. So there is a very intimate connection between light and the human body. In fact, it has now been proven that all cells emit light, and the light comes from the DNA. There are laser-like pulses of light that come from the cells. And the reason why they're there, because nature is so efficient, is that these pulses of light coordinate, initiate, direct biochemical responses in the cell. So while we are made up of biochemicals, in fact, as Becker found in his book, The Body Electric, it's the energetic system, the bioelectrical system of the body, the energetic system of the body that controls the biochemistry. So as the ancients knew, we are indeed beings of light. And this is what connects us all. All right, let's see about the next question. Can you tell us a little bit about the adhesive that is used with the X39 patch? There's not a lot to say here. We decided right from the beginning that these products were going to be made as medical devices to those standards, because they were going to be applied to the body. So right from the beginning, we went to 3M to use the same type of hypoallergenic adhesive that's used in Band-Aids. So there's going to be 1 in 10,000 people that are allergic to the adhesive, and that's why we, quite frankly, don't get very many complaints about this. So if you apply the patch to your body and you get an allergic reaction, or if you know going into this that you have an allergy to the adhesive that's used in Band-Aids, what you can do is apply the patches to the inside of the clothing. As long as the patch is near the skin, it will still stimulate the skin with low levels of light. So if you have an allergy to the patches and you're worried that you can't use them, allergy to the adhesive, then simply apply the patch to the inside of the clothing, let it touch the skin, the outside of it, and you're good to go. It's still going to work. So the adhesive is manufactured by 3M. It's hypoallergenic, and only 1 in 10,000 people are going to have an allergy to it. How many X39s can you wear at one time? Well, this is actually interesting, because what we find is that most of the time with all of our patches, 1 patch is enough. There are exceptions to this. But when we do our studies, so if you go on our website, you go to the science section of the website and you see the studies where we did our blood testing, that was only with 1 patch. If you look at the urine studies that we did, I'm actually going to be talking about that in a few minutes in a little bit more detail. Those results were also with only wearing 1 patch. Now, could you use a second X39? Yes, of course you could. The current thinking is that you'll probably get about 80% of the benefits from 1 X39 and maybe another 10 or 20% from the second one. So it's a point of diminishing returns. Now, there are going to be very clear exceptions to this. And what we see is that this is with Icewave, with the energy patches, and with glutathione. Those are great examples. So let's say that you have someone that has chronic pain, like arthritis or MS or Parkinson's. They have pain throughout the body, and we want to help to relieve that pain. And by the way, this is a good time to say I'm not a medical doctor. Anything that I may say over the course of this discussion is not medical advice, and any recommendation I might make, please take that to your healthcare practitioner before doing it. But I may certainly mention things that I found from over the years of speaking with doctors and doing research into this field that may benefit someone and help improve their quality of life. So what we found through practical experience is that if someone has chronic pain and they have systemic pain, pain throughout their body, is that applying a set of patches on the bottom of the feet or on the lower torso and applying a set of patches on the upper torso works remarkably well at relieving pain. So, for example, you can see a study that we did with Dr. Bruno Brandimart from Italy. We're applying a set of ice wave patches on the bottom of the feet at the acupuncture point, kidney 1, just so you have an accurate location for that. And then applying another set up over here around the thymus. Those acupuncture points are called kidney 27. But again, the idea is on the upper and lower torso that produced a very strong bioelectrical response in the body, which could reduce pain within, starting within seconds and as much as 100% relief of pain in 2 or 3 minutes. Glutathione has been remarkable when using more than one patch. So, for example, let's say you have someone with a sore throat. You can apply 2 or 3 glutathione patches right around the throat. So right over here, and then if you like, a third one over here. And we find that within minutes, the sore throat can significantly diminish. So we're not going to get into too much more detail about that today, but with X39, I'd say one patch is fine. And if you wanted to explore the use of other patches, then go ahead and do that. From a business perspective, I completely agree with Onyx, Steve, and Gina. Only promote X39 in your business. You're going to be incredibly successful and focused by doing that. Then, if your members want to use other patches, for whatever they need it for pain relief, detoxification, stress reduction, whatever the case may be, they can do it. But for business, we're focusing on X39. And one patch most of the time is going to be fine. What systems in the body does X39 balance? Okay, let's go back, and instead of talking about this, let's look at a clinical study. And again, clinical studies can be found in the science section of our website. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this. And we're going to look at a double-blind placebo-controlled study we did starting back in 2018. And, by the way, one of the frustrating things about clinical studies is how long they take, especially when you make a decision that you want to publish them. You can initiate the research, let's say in 2018, but our members may not find out about it for 1 or 2 or 3 years after the fact, because we're waiting for it to be published. COVID, by the way, was especially a problem because during COVID, we went through years where clinics were closed and you couldn't get any clinical studies done. And even when clinics opened up, even today, getting people to come into clinics to participate in studies is quite a challenge because people still have some residual fear of COVID. So, but nevertheless, we push forward. So here's a double-blind study that we did using urine analysis. And this was a study with 50 people. And we wanted to look in a population of people that was over the age of 63. A reason for this is that stem cell activity declines dramatically over the age of 60. You could say a 60 to 80% drop in not only the number of stem cells, but when you're looking at the stemness, the functionality of those stem cells, their ability to release growth factors and repair tissue. Not coincidentally, there is a 60 to 80% drop in copper peptide after the age of 60. So the level of stem cell activity in the body quite closely parallels the levels of copper peptide. So what we did in this study is we wanted to look at immediate effects. This was very early on in the days where we were trying to determine whether or not X39 worked. So we kept the studies very brief. The idea is that if you're stimulating the body with light, we should see an immediate response. So let's take data at baseline after 24 hours of use, and then let's look at what happens after 1 week of using X39. Are there going to be any effects? And we certainly did find effects. So the first thing to know about X39 is that it improves the metabolism. And we see this show up in utilization of amino acids. So amino acids, of course, are the building blocks of proteins and peptides. And this is important because if we have a long-term injury, there's going to be inflammation, there's going to be damaged tissue, and we want to repair that. And the only way we're going to repair damaged tissue is that if we're making collagen, a protein, and that requires the synthesis of amino acids. So what we found was that you put X39 on, and it starts to increase the synthesis of and utilization of amino acids. So that's very, very important. Now, another thing that we found, which at the time to me was surprising in a good way, was that we were seeing improvements in memory within the first 7 days. And that is staggering. Now, we've done research into cognitive function for many, many years. It's an obvious concern for anyone that's aging, which is 100% of the population, and especially for people after they get over the age of 50, when most people have experienced mitochondrial dysfunction, they've got undesirable changes in their hormones, and their memory begins to suffer for a variety of reasons. So to see an improvement in memory in the first 7 days was remarkable. And in fact, we have a separate study looking at exactly why this is and why it happens. We also saw a reduction in blood pressure, which is great. So we don't make any blood pressure claims, but one of the things that we know is that X39 is certainly safe for cardiovascular health. And if you have low blood pressure, not to worry. If you have low blood pressure, you're not going to see a decrease in your blood pressure. This is relative to people with blood pressure that's higher than normal. Now, heart rate variability measures the ratio of muscle contractions in the 4 chambers of the heart. And we've done many studies on heart rate variability over the years, going back to 2005. So it was great to see that by elevating copper peptide, we could see the heart rate variability improve. The rhythm of the heart improves. And there's a lot of benefits to that, not only for the heart, but for the nervous system. Remarkably, we saw that people started to see an improvement in the quality of their sleep the first 24 hours. Now, I hope all of you are going to be at NOVA, because I'm going to be covering this in great detail. We're going to be doing an entire training on different types of health conditions and what type of options there are for you to resolve your health condition naturally. I'm not going to be making any medical claims about the patches. And anyway, come to Nova and you can see what we're going to talk about there. But one of the subjects I'm going to cover is sleep. So if you have insomnia and or you're having difficulty sleeping, you're not sleeping more than 4, 5, 6 hours, there is definitely help available that's natural, that works great. You have so many options. And we're going to cover that in great detail in Nova. Okay, an improvement in vitality. So when we're looking at anti-aging effects in the body and we want to reverse human aging, it's going to all start with the ability of our cells to make energy, make and use energy. And that happens in an area of the cell called the mitochondria. And normally, as people age, the way they make and use energy and cell communications declines rather sharply. So what we saw was a very powerful anti-aging and age reversal effect with X39. It improves overall health and vitality the first week that you use it. Now, we know that X39 elevates copper peptide. We're going to show our first blood study, actually, that we did, and there's multiple blood studies that we've done. Copper peptide resets the genes to a more youthful state, 1/3 of the genes. So, of course, what we'd like to have is 100%. But resetting 1/3 of the human genome to a younger, healthier state produces remarkable effects. And we see that show up in our testing. X39 is also going to improve breathing. And that gets statistically significant as we approach 7 days. So those are some of the things that we have measured as benefits of X39, and there's many other health benefits. Another way to look at this, when we talk about what systems in the body does X39 balance, you can see that this is a systemic effect. X39, because it improves memory, it's improving the health of the brain. X39 is improving heart rate variability, so it's good for the heart. X39 is improving utilization of amino acids. We find proteins throughout the entire body. So copper peptide is going to have systemic effects. Let's look at 2 public domain published studies on copper peptide. Let's start with this one, regenerative and protective actions of copper peptide in light of new gene data. So, first of all, Lauren Picard was the person that discovered copper peptide. And my opinion is that he needs a Nobel Prize. His work that he did over a period of 50 years on copper peptide is unparalleled. He was the first one to make the observation that you take old liver cells from someone that's 80, and you put them in the blood of someone young and healthy, and those old cells start to function like younger, healthier cells. And one of the factors that's responsible for that is copper peptide. So he should definitely get a Nobel Prize for that work. Now, as part of his published data, one of the things that he finds is that copper peptide resets thousands of genes to a more youthful state. One of the things we might want to look at here, and again, he did this work on injections of copper peptide or examining copper peptide in vitro in a cell culture. We do not do studies looking at anti-cancer effects with X39. We don't look at DNA repair. These are medical claims, so we don't do that type of research. So, but from the point of view of looking at effects of copper peptide, this is extremely interesting. So when we see people get a reduction in stress and anxiety with X39, and especially the combination of X39 and Eon, we can point to clinical data to see, okay, that makes sense. There's anti-anxiety, anti-pain effects from copper peptide. DNA repair is really interesting to me. And there's also effects with copper peptide where it can protect the body from UV radiation. As an example, one of the things we learned quite by accident was you put on an X39 patch, and we see that many people do not get a sunburn, that they simply go directly to a tan. That's an exciting benefit of X39 that I have personally enjoyed. My heritage is German, Italian, and Irish, and I have Irish skin, no question about it. So my entire life, I have burned quite easily in the sun. So if you're someone that burns easily, what I recommend doing, in addition to trying X39, still use sunscreen, of course. I'd have to recommend that legally. But also make sure you're taking a copper supplement. 2.5 milligrams of copper glycinate would be fine. There's natural sources of copper, such as wheatgrass, chocolate, liver especially is very high in copper. But if you want to cover the bases, take a daily supplement. Copper is an amazing antiviral. So especially in a post-COVID world, taking copper daily is a smart way to help give yourself protection and for some of the other benefits associated with copper. But in any case, this is a good study to look at with respect to benefits of copper peptide. Another one is this one over here, and we're going to talk about recovery of stem cells. But just so you can see the where this is coming from, it is in this article here, again by Dr. Picard. GHK peptide is a natural modulator of multiple cellular pathways in skin regeneration. If you simply do a search on copper peptide and stem cells, you can find these studies quite easily. You can even just do a Google search on GHK Cu and clinical studies. And again, you can find it quite easily. So this article is going to give a great introduction to copper peptide and some of the many, many benefits that are associated with it. There's one on DNA repair. So there's been a lot of information that's been obtained through clinical studies on the connection between copper peptide and stem cells. I know this was one of the questions that was being asked. So copper peptide acts as what's called a Yamanaka factor. And copper peptide is going to have a number of significant benefits when it comes to stem cells and wound healing. And that's quite evident by all the clinical research. So how does this work exactly? First thing is that all of the benefits of copper peptide eventually trace back to the use of this peptide as a gene modulator, meaning it's going to reset genes to a younger, healthier state. When we're looking at stem cell activity, the relevant gene is P63. P63 is going to turn on the ability of stem cells to proliferate. So in other words, let's say that you have an acute or chronic injury. Few things there. First thing is there's an inflammatory response. So if you want to heal from any chronic injury or a chronic health condition, you've got to get the inflammation under control. Now, there's ways to do this through your diet, through your lifestyle, through supplementation. We don't make medical claims about the patches. Elevating glutathione, using a product like Eon helps to manage inflammation. The only thing we claim about that is that it's useful for stress reduction and useful for managing pain. Where this matters, though, is that stem cells are going to be killed off by oxidative stress and inflammation. So if you're wondering, why do I have arthritis? How come I haven't healed? You've got to get the inflammation under control so the stem cells can go in there and repair the damaged tissue. So copper peptide is going to be part of reducing inflammation and managing it. It's going to make the stem cells act and behave like younger, healthier cells. And it's going to allow the stem cells to get to where they're going. Copper peptide also acts as a Yamanaka factor, meaning that you increase the copper peptide levels in the skin, and they revert skin stem cells back over into pluripotent stem cells. Those pluripotent stem cells then get into the blood, get into your circulatory system, and go to where they're needed. So elevating copper peptide has enormous benefits when it comes to repairing damaged systems in the body. This was also something that I thought was worth mentioning. It's with VEGF. When we were doing our stem cell research at the National University of Ireland in Galway, this was the key growth factor that we were looking at, VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factor. And that's because of the obvious benefits that VEGF is going to have on the circulatory system, on the cardiovascular system. So if you can elevate VEGF, I'm not making a medical claim. This is for injections of copper peptide. Copper peptide injections can be used to elevate VEGF and treat many different types of cardiovascular disease. So that's the interest in it. And of course, you study MSC stem cells, which I pronounce as mesenchymal because that's how they pronounce it in Ireland. I know there's other pronunciations for that. Okay. That might have been a very roundabout way of answering that question. So thank you for bearing with me. What's your favorite scientific study that you've done so far on X39? I think the favorite is always the first. When you're an inventor and you create something, with a lot of prayer, by the way, to me is always the best way to create, is through prayer, through divine guidance. So you're getting the truth. You're looking at nature and turning to nature for examples. So you're doing things in harmony with the human body and for the planet. But when you're developing something new and you do a study and you see for the very first time, okay, I'm not crazy, this thing actually works. All that time and energy and effort that I spent researching this and believing that there could be an outcome, it actually works. That becomes your favorite study most of the time. That's what I found anyway. So, in this example, this was a small pilot study, but we have many more studies now. Again, go to the science section of the website. But we've done our double-blind studies at this point on using blood studies, measuring increases in copper peptide. And so what we found in this study, which was a pilot, our first one, again, taking people over the age of 60, because that's the group that's going to have lowest levels of copper peptide. We found that just after one day, that GHK is going to increase to statistical significance. And then, of course, once you synthesize GHK, which has its own benefits, it then binds with copper and becomes copper peptide. And we do, in fact, get statistical significance on this within the first week of using X39. So this study is fantastic because it was our first confirmation that the patch worked. And it also showed that using X39 the first day would produce a benefit. So that was my favorite study.